Greetings, number one Marmaduke fan here, looking at book one of the IDW Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, the Ultimate Collection. I really wanted to pull out my 1990s out of print edition. I think it was the first graphic novel collection of the Turtles, but I couldn't find it in my room. So that is motivation for me to finally unbox all of the boxes of books from my last move. I'm going to do it, but today we're just going to talk about this new edition. So overall, it's a pretty good edition. I highly recommend, like 5 out of 5 stars. Check out the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles comic run. Of course, check it out even if you're a casual fan of the Turtles. This is peak Turtles. Even if you hate the Turtles, you should check this out to give it a chance because it is such a good comic. Everything that made these characters great was established in this first run, and it's a blast. So definitely pick it up. The IDW edition is an affordable edition, and it's pretty good. I noticed in the notes, by the way, they made some allusions to things like little bonus mini comics and like alternate versions of the comics that weren't included. So I don't think this is like an exhaustive collection of everything Turtles related, but you're getting basically the Eastman Laird initial run in black and white. I think my 1990s edition is in color, if I remember right. So that's kind of like all my thoughts about the IDW edition itself. It's not, and the annotations and notes from the authors are pretty cool. Little historical factoids like Donatello was almost going to be named Bernini, but Peter Laird didn't think that was a very good name, and Eastman agreed later. So now I want to talk about the Turtles as a concept. So this is an iconic franchise. If you think about it, this is the most successful underground indie comic of all time. So what makes it click? Well, the whole idea at the most elementary level is kind of genius. Even the name, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, is kind of a joke. When they talked about the origin story of how they came up with the Turtles, I don't remember if it was Eastman or Laird. I think it might have been Eastman. Drew a goofy-looking turtle for his roommate as a joke. Haha, look, it's a Ninja Turtle. One time they were washing dishes and one of them grabbed a cheese grater and said, what if there was a bad guy covered in cheese graters and he was the grater? No, let's make him the shredder. So it's that level of dude bro. But then they pull you into the world and they make you believe it. So the concept is absurd. Their names are absurd. The whole thing is kind of a giant Frank Miller Daredevil parody. But because they love comics, they care about storytelling motifs, and they use those storytelling motifs to draw you into the world. So in addition to Frank Miller, their other big inspiration is Jack Kirby. So they always make a point that we have a big opening splash page action scene on the first page, opening up to a 2-page spread to draw you in. And they do this so often, they actually note when they forget to do it on a given issue. So Jack Kirby, kind of a stiff style, but a very imaginative visual thinker. Frank Miller, they talk about like borrowing his scratchy panel borders, and it's definitely probably taking some influence from his grungy, noirish Daredevil, and I think he had done Frank Miller was working on Sin City by the time this was out. But Frank Miller loved his solid black and white composition. So I think one of the beautiful thing about Eastman and Laird's run is how rough, grungy, and sometimes even like bad it looks in early issues, but they keep pushing themselves, they get better and better, and they keep upping the ante, both for themselves as artists and writers and for the Turtles in universe. The world keeps getting bigger and more exciting and more ambitious in the kinds of stories they do. And if all you've ever seen of them is one of their cartoon representations, the 2003 cartoon definitely took a lot of inspiration from the Eastman Laird run, and I appreciate it for that. But I don't think anything has quite hit the in-your-face element of old school Turtles. Now, I love the 80s cartoon, but you can kind of see how if you were a fan of this comic book and then you got to the very G-rated, very censored 80s cartoon, that would kind of feel like a letdown compared to what they were hitting you with. Like they're telling the Shredder to commit seppuku, people are getting chopped to bits. K-Bella. But, okay, now let's talk about the concept. So why does a concept as absurd as Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles work? I have a couple thoughts about that. So maybe thought number one is they're almost like fairy tale characters. So in a fairy tale, there's always this contrast between the normal world and the magical world. They live in 1980s New York. 1980s New York was contemporary to the writers. Crime, seedy streets, but hidden away in this seemingly ordinary world is a magical world where these strange, violent different creatures are involved in an ongoing battle. You could even sort of look at April O'Neil as sort of a fairy tale little girl who gets swept into this crazy world. And so under this, in the sewers, behind the scenes of your ordinary world, is this incredible Bushido battle that is taking place. So it starts off hitting you with that, and then every chapter it ups the ante. It keeps changing the scenario. So issue 1 is, of course, them fighting the Shredder. So they're involved in an ancient kind of grudge match between warring factions of a ninja clan. It ends with the Shredder seemingly getting killed. They kind of nodded and winked and said, yeah, we got rid of the body just in case we wanted to bring him back. But we actually thought at the time that they didn't want to bring him back initially because they didn't like deaths always being undone. So what's interesting is they've killed off the bad guy, the famous bad guy in the first issue, kind of like Professor Moriarty in Sherlock Holmes. So the Turtles are not just fighting the Shredder every single episode. Then it switches to them fighting an evil robot lord, and almost immediately Donatello becomes a tech guy because Peter Laird was kind of a tech geek and did all the robot designs. I think Peter Laird has described Donatello as his favorite turtle, and Kevin Eastman has described Raphael as his favorite turtle. They meet April and they lose the Splinter. So one of the interesting things about Splinter, he's a giant rat. Why do you care about what happens to Splinter? Well, because they care about what happens to Splinter. So the magic is, even though these guys are kind of absurd, weird, and surreal, because they take their world seriously, you start taking their world seriously. You really feel the pain of their loss when they lose Splinter, and it takes us all the way to nearly the end of this book for them to finally get reunited with Splinter. I think they were very conscious of April O'Neil being a grounding force. She's the ordinary person involved in all of this magic and chaos and eventually space aliens. So having her have this human connection with the Turtles and living in a little, rundown antique shop we keep one foot in reality while the surreal world gets weirder and weirder. So they encounter aliens, investigate that. Raphael gets his first sort of character arc dealing with his anger, and there's a episode of the 2003 cartoon directly based on that. So one of the kind of neat transitions is from the Shredder and an ancient world to aliens and a futuristic world. So already, just in one book, we've now seen the Turtles fighting an ancient ninja lord, dealing with a mad scientist who wants to take over New York, and now out in space doing the Star Wars thing. And if you think about it, Star Wars is kind of omnipresent now, but at the time this came out, Star Wars was pretty new. It was the mid 80s, so the first movie had come out in the late 70s, so they were basically just grabbing every little thing they liked and stuffing as much of it as they could into their world. And what I love about their notes, by the way, is their notes alternate between really thoughtful, critique on their art process, and then just them saying, yeah, dude, I thought it'd be cool if, I have some like space lasers here, pew, pew, pew. They are such college roommate dude bros. I love it in their commentary. But okay, so we expand the universe to space, but they kind of make a point of, there's a little human Fugitoid character, a man trapped in the body of a robot. This, by the way, was going to be his own character and universe, and they eventually decided, what the heck, we'll bring him into the mainline Turtles continuity. That was the part where I noticed that, and I think they mentioned something about having like a one-off Fugitoid comic, and that wasn't included in this collection. But anyway, meeting the Fugitoid and fighting the cool, two groups of aliens. They connect that to our world somewhat by saying this sort of parallels the Cold War, right? Like especially in the 80s, there was like this omnipresent fear that we would probably nuke each other off the planet at any given point. So the Fugitoid knows what's the equivalent of the nuclear warhead technology. He knows how to use teleportation technology. He doesn't want to hand that to either side of the war. So of course the Turtles are helping him run through all this. Now after a Mos Eisley Katina scene, they end up on something of a Death Star. They have I got to show this page because this is an example of what I'm talking about. So if you compare it to the earlier pages, they actually point to these pages and say this is where we started kind of like achieving the level of scale and scope we were always hoping for. So they keep pushing themselves until the world gets a lot bigger and a lot more Jack Kirby-esque. And I love, by the way, in the gladiatorial scene, how the Turtles kill four dudes, right? Like you can't imagine the 80s Turtles doing that. They wouldn't have let the 2003 Turtles do that even on four kids. So I love, they are honorable. They aren't like eager to kill, but the fact that death is real in this world and they can actually use their weapons. I think it, okay, so I introduced my nephew to the Ninja Turtles recently, and he immediately latched onto them. And I've only showed him the 80s cartoon because I think, this stuff's probably a little heady for him still at age 4. But any little boy can immediately latch onto the Turtles, find a favorite turtle, and understand them to be strange, really weirdos, but they're also great warriors. So the fact that they're actually allowed to engage in real combat, I think, helps push this beyond what any of the cartoon adaptations have been able to do. There's a great section where Eastman says, a lot of people ask me if I did martial arts, and honestly, no. I just watched a lot of kung fu movies, and I tried to think about how follow-through works. So I think his example was if someone, is winding up their right fist in one panel, they should be swinging a right punch in the next panel. And you can see that in how he paces everything. He thinks through action, from action to action in each fight scene. So I won't talk too much more about this. Okay, I'll talk about this. So this reunion actually is emotionally effective because we've basically been waiting since around here for us to get to this moment. So the magic of it is it hits you with this absurd idea, turtles being raised by a rat in the sewers. They believe in each other as brothers, and they think of Splinter as their father. Therefore, you believe it. Therefore, you become invested with them. And what they never do, they never have. The Turtles are goofy. They already have their goofy personalities, even this early on. But they never do a thing where, like Splinter says, "Oh my gosh, isn't it ridiculous that we're a bunch of rats and turtles living in the sewer?" Hashtag random. Am I right? They believe in their world. Their world is weird, but because they believe in it, we can connect with them and enter into that world with them. So another aspect I appreciated, I think Eastman said, if you can imagine it, you can draw it, was the advice he would always give at comic conventions when people would bring him their portfolios. And I think he was kind of aware of how rough their style is. Like you can tell they have a rough style, but having a rough style didn't stop them from creating a expansive, detailed, and fascinating universe with extremely ambitious, ambitious fight scenes and ambitious and establishing shots that suggest a rich and detailed universe. So it's one of the reasons it's become such a great franchise is based on the strength of the original comic run and the concepts poured in and the love poured into the original comic run. So this really belongs in any comic collection, not just for of course for Turtles fans, but not just for Turtles fans. I kind of wish we got some of the little extras mentioned. Like I think they mentioned a 4-page comic story featuring a guest artist that I didn't see, but really solid collection, really affordable. I think you can get like this one for $20, and it may not have all the bells and whistles of some of the giant hardcover ones, but this is a really solid copy if you're looking for one to give to, I'd say maybe a 12-year-old reader could handle some of the violence and the curses in this. So excellent run. I'll be collecting more. I'm a Marmaduke fan. I don't want to show you guys no more crotch shots, no more feet shots. I love you guys. Catch you later.